Hi guys, Grand J here, and welcome to our 6th Opus 4 set review. Today we'll be talking about the water cards. So the first card to be talking about is Adamantoise. So it is a 1-cost monster. Put Adamantoise into the break zone, choose one forward. During this turn, the next damage dealt to it this turn is reduced by 3,000 instead. Draw one card. So I absolutely love this card. It allows you to, basically combat trick, allows you to deal 3,000 damage, allows you to prevent damage from your forwards whenever they're in combat or from your opponent's summons. And this card draws you a card as well. So it's a cheap monster you can put into play. It's got a quite potent effect. It forces your opponent to constantly think about using their removal spells against your forwards, because you can always reduce it by 3,000 damage. You're fighting in combat's a lot easier as well. So this card is a great card. It synergizes with a lot of other cards as well. So I absolutely love this card. It does replace itself. So it's effectively 1 CP to prevent 3k damage. And that's always an annoying effect that your opponent's going to have to deal with. And unless your opponent EX bursts an Alexander or remove off you, you can always use this in response to prevent damage and draw a card. Next card is Mystic. It's a 2-cost backup. Break, put Mystic put Mystic into a break zone, choose one forward, it loses 1,000 power until the end of the turn. It's a simple water backup. Water backups at 2 are kind of there's not a lot that have good break abilities. So Scholar kind of is like the only 2-cost water backup at the moment that's got an ability to break itself that has a relevant effect. Mystic, although its effect is pretty small, it does have a relevant ability that's always going to be relevant while it's up. So as long as you do have a forward and you do have this up, it does make your opponent's trading a little bit more difficult. So your opponent has to consider whether you're going to use Mystic to make their forward smaller to the point where you can trade against them, or to a point where equal forwards and you're going to be able to reduce the power. So this card's a little bit of an annoying effect. It's kind of like the small water version of Monk. And because of that, it's a pretty good card. I don't know where it's going to sit in terms of water decks. I don't know if they're going to make full use of this, but it's a pretty decent ability nonetheless. And so if you are just kind of struggling to figure out what to put into your water deck and Scholar kind of doesn't fit the right place, then Mystics are not a bad option to put into the deck as well. Next, we have Gao. So Gao is a 5-cost forward at 6,000 power, so it's quite below the curve, but when Gao enters the field, choose one monster of cost 2 or less in your break zone and put it onto the field. Also, for each monster you control, Gao gets plus 1,000 power. Also, it's got an S ability of S Blue Dull. Choose one forward, break it. You can only use this ability if you have 3 or more monsters. So it does have 3 abilities, and they're all pretty good. So the first one, where Gao has plus 1,000 for each monster, as soon as you have, say, 1 or 2 monsters, Gao is already pretty much sort of at curve in terms of her power, because she does get your monster as well. So this card looks a lot like Lena from the previous set, where Lena, she was a 7,000 power and she got you a forward of 2 or less. Gal does a very similar type of thing, but she's also got the ability to move from a 6,000 to a 7,000 or 8,000 power forward, and also, yeah, she does get you a 2-cost monster or less from your break zone. So this does synergize very well with a lot of other blue cards that have this monster support to them. And also, she's just got a random S ability where you can just break it forward if you have 3 or more monsters, which isn't too hard to do. And this ability, as long as you got 3 monsters, and upon activation when you got 3 monsters, you can use this ability. You don't actually need to have 3 monsters on resolution of this ability. So your opponent can't use a destruction spell to break one of your monsters in response to this S ability. So overall, this card's pretty good. Definitely if you're playing the water monster build, and most monster build decks are going to involve water in some sense, because they got Gao, they got Realm, and they got Mirror. So there's a lot of monster support in water, and so Gao is going to fit into any sort of monster build because of that. Next card is Green Dragon. So it's a 2-cost monster. Pay 1 until the end of the turn. Green Dragon also becomes a forward with 7,000 power. You can only use this ability once per turn. So not a particularly impressive monster. The one advantage that this monster have compared to a lot of the other monsters that come into 7,000 power forwards is that it does only pay 1 though. So it's 1 colorless. So if you are playing a blue something monster deck, then Green Dragon is a very easy way to achieve this, because you can use any backup to activate this ability. You don't specifically have to hold a specific color or specifically water to use this ability. It's not particularly impressive, but depending on how greedy your deck is and what colors you're running, you may opt to use Green Dragon for its just versatility and ease of being able to activate its ability. Next card is Cleon. It's a 2-cost monster. When either player casts a summon, put Cleon into a break zone. If you do so, cancel the summon's effect. When Cleon is put from the field into a break zone, draw 1 card. So this card's a little worded in a very weird way, but basically what it means is every time a player casts a summon, this card puts a trigger on the stack that says put this card into bin to negate that summon. So basically, it will only negate one summon. So as soon as it's put from the field to the bin using its ability, it will negate that summon. All the other summons will resolve. So it can't cancel multiple summons in a stack. So yeah, it will only ever cancel one summon, and it will cast the last most summon played on the stack. So it does have, yeah, it is a little bit weirdly worded in that regard. Also, if there is a remove from game modifier, such as UNH or such as NWO, this card will still resolve its ability. So it can still negate summons even when UNH is on the field and your opponent wants to remove Cleon. However, the second ability of when Cleon is put from the field into a break zone, draw a card, this ability will not trigger if your opponent removes it from the game because it's an enter break zone ability. The first one is like a trigger off summons type ability. So this card is basically an ongoing prevention for the player to play the next summon. So obviously, if you do play this in your deck, you're probably going to be playing it in a deck that focuses significantly less on summons, that runs basically no summons, I would assume. And yeah, that's how you build your strategy. So it can be quite imposing to have this in the field. Your opponent can't use summons, or your opponent effectively has to waste a summon in order to get rid of this ability. The fact that it nets you a card when it does die is actually pretty good as well. So the trade-off of not using summons in your deck to be able to force one of your opponent's summons to be negated and draw a card is actually pretty decent. So yeah, so the payoff is actually there. It's a little bit difficult to play, it's a little bit difficult to build around because water has quite a lot of summons. But if you do sort of take away all the summons and play Cleon, you're probably going to be reasonably well rewarded from it, and your opponent's going to find it very difficult to play around. In addition to this, he's also got kind of other abilities in terms of other combos, in terms of if you combo him with, say, the Earth 8 cost Kefka that allows you to put forwards and monster into the break zone for his ability, then you can give yourself the ability to play summons. So you put Cleon down, and when you don't need to cast summons, you have it on the field, but as soon as you really want to cast a summon, you can just put it into a break zone using Kefka's ability. And because Cleon just says when it's put from the field to break zone, draw a card, it does allow you to draw a card. Cleon doesn't have to put itself into break zone with its own effect in order to draw your card. So that's kind of one benefit to this monster. So there are some combinations that you can play with this card, but the biggest drawback is that you're going to want to use no summons or virtually no summons in order to take full advantage of this card. Next we have Gladiator. So it's a 2-cost standard unit backup for water, dull, break. Choose one job standard unit forward that costs 3 or less in your break zone. Play it onto the field. You can only use this ability during your turn. So this is a really, really strong ability. So water has a lot of really good 2-cost and belowers and 3-cost below standard units. So you can get back a whole bunch of crazy stuff like Vikings. You can get stuff like Vikings, you can get stuff like Geomancers. So you got a whole lot of ways to recur these forwards. Water does also have standard unit support in terms of Warrior Light as well. So this does sit in very well with that. It doesn't say it has to be a water standard unit as well. So if you do want to play the Water Lightning standard unit Dragoon deck, then this also gives you another way to bring Dragoons out as well. So this card is actually really, really quite good. It's a 2-cost backup, so you can put it into play. And later on, when you do need the space, you can just break it. You get immediate value, and you can do stuff with it. So this card is great. Any sort of water standard unit deck, I do foresee this card seeing play. Next is Go-Go. So it's interesting that this card's just named Go-Go, and it's a mime, but it's not Fame Mimic Go-Go. So those are completely two different forwards. So you can have Go-Go and Fame Mimic Go-Go out at the same time. So just Go-Go is a 3-cost forward at 7,000 power. If a forward in your break zone has haste, first strike, or brave, Go-Go gains those abilities. So yeah, so it's a forward that gains abilities for all the different cards in your break zone. Do note that a card has to naturally have haste, first strike, and brave. It doesn't include all those forwards that have some sort of condition, this card gains brave, or some sort of condition, this card gains first strike. It doesn't consider those, so you have to have forwards that just specifically have these forwards, as in have those abilities. So Feral Chaos is probably the best trigger for this ability, because Feral Chaos is the only forward that can have all 3 of these abilities on him itself. And Water does have very easy ways of putting Feral Chaos in the bin. You have Melwibs, you have Geese, you have Moogles, you have Poo Poo now. So you have a ton of ways to cycle cards from your hand into the bin, and then that allows you to trigger Go-Go. I think Go-Go is very good in those scenarios. So if you're playing any sort of mono water deck that wants to focus around Go-Go, this is a great card. Very easy to put Feral Chaos in the bin, and as soon as Feral Chaos is in the bin, Go-Go is a 3-cost 7k that has first strike, brave, and haste. So you're going to be able to come in, put him into play, attack with him straight away. He's going to get through a lot of stuff, and he's brave, so he can defend as well. This is an absolutely super value card as long as you have Feral Chaos in the bin. Next we have Poo Poo. So talking about Poo Poo, it's a 1-cost summon. EX Burst, discard 1 card, then draw 2 cards. So this card is fundamentally the same thing as Moogle, which was draw 2 cards and discard 1 card from your hand. But there's one benefit that Poo Poo brings that Moogle doesn't, is that if Poo Poo is the last card in your hand and you play it and you have no cards in hand, when it says discard a card, you don't have to discard a card if you've got no cards in hand. So as long as you've got a card in hand, you have to discard, but Poo Poo has the benefit of, if you don't have any cards in your hand when you play it, then yeah, you can discard 1 card from your hand to draw 2 cards. So that's the one value of Poo Poo. It's like, everyone's complaining about how this card probably has the worst art of the set. It's a very simple and basic concept art. I'm not a fan of the art, but you know, it's not a terrible card. The biggest issue is that it is in water though, so water does have a lot of ways to draw cards and a lot of ways to build resources. So you're not going to find yourselves in too many situations where you're going to have no cards in hand when you're a water player. And so this card is going to be a little bit difficult in mono water decks, but definitely in like other colors where you do find yourself being more like hand resource intensive, then Poo Poo is kind of like a cheap way to get down to your last card, use Poo Poo, and then redraw 2 extra cards for some additional value. So it does have its uses. It's not a terrible card. And yeah, so this card will not see play generally, but in those couple of niche decks that do find that they get to their low hand size very quickly or very easily, then Poo Poo might be an additional play for those decks. Next card is Steiner. So one of the water legends of this set, it's a 4-cost 8,000 power forward. When Steiner enters the field, if you have received 3 damage or more, draw 1 card. Dull active water forward other than Steiner. Steiner gains plus 1,000 power until the end of the turn. So basically this card is like a value card in terms of it's on curve, it's 4 for 8,000, and if you have 3 more damage, then you draw a card. So it basically becomes a 2 CP 8K. So it's almost kind of like a Dark Knight in that sense. And it's also got like additional abilities. You can like dull your other active like water forwards to make Steiner a little bit bigger. I don't foresee yourself using that ability too often. Definitely there are combos with it, like if you have it with Ash, then you can like dull Ash to give him additional power, and then you can pay water to reactivate Ash and then do it again. So there are little combos you can do with that. That being said though, I don't think you'll be using the second ability too often, simply because yeah, it's a very costly ability to use, and yeah, you'll probably be doing it whenever your opponent has like combat tricks and you just need that plus extra 1,000 or plus 2,000 in order to get over your opponent's combat tricks. So the option is always there. So your opponent has to calculate against that, but this card is not a terrible card. It doesn't like replace the previous Steiner though of the 5-cost EX Burst, because that Steiner was just so much value in a card. So this card probably doesn't replace that, but I could definitely see in sort of water decks or like any sort of water deck that runs the previous Steiner to run like 1 or 2 copies of this as an additional search for you to play. So if you do get to the point where you get to that third Steiner, at least you've got another target that you can like search out. And Steiner, at least towards the mid to late game, is going to be value for you every single time, as long as you get 3 points of damage, which is pretty easy to get to once you're around the mid game. You're usually like at around that like 3 to 4 to like 5 damage mark, and this card is going to be able to net you cards every time you play it at that stage of the game. So this card's not a bad card. It's probably not a free of. You might find yourself playing a 1 or 2 of in water decks, and yeah, it sort of fits in quite nicely there. Next is Strago. So it's a 3-cost forward EX Burst. When Strago enters the field, choose 1 forward or monster your opponent controls. If you control a category 6 forward other than Strago, return it to its owner's hand. So this card is basically a 3 for 6,000, but has a Leviathan attached to it, and a Leviathan that can hit monsters. It's also got an S ability of S2 water dull, divide 12,000 damage equally among all forwards your opponent controls, round up to nearest 1,000. So basically it deals 12,000 to 1 target, or 6,000 to 2, or it deals 4,000 to 3 targets, etc., etc. So 12,000 is actually a very divisible number, so it makes it very easy to go divide it from 1 to 4 forwards. Once it gets to 5th forward, it gets like really difficult to calculate. And because of that, yeah, like I don't think you'll be like in a situation where you'll be doing it over 5 different forwards too often. But when you're hitting 1 forward, it's generally going to kill it. 2 forwards at 6,000 damage, you're probably not really going to kill anything. You're going to deal some damage. And because of that, like its S ability isn't particularly good unless your opponent really has 1 forward, in my opinion. So that being said though, this card is not a bad card. So it's got a Leviathan effect attached to it. And yeah, so when it enters plays, it bounces a guy, and yeah, it is a Final Fantasy 6 character, and there's a lot of Final Fantasy 6 support in this set, so it's not bad. It's also EX Burst, so it basically gives you extra Leviathans as long as you got a guy on the field. So yeah, so this card is a tempo play. If you got some dudes on the board, you put Strago down, you bounce your opponent's guys, and you can continue attacking with the rest of your guys. So he is definitely more opting towards an aggressive, faster Final Fantasy 6 deck. It really depends on like which color Final Fantasy 6 deck you want to play. But if you do want to run it with water, then definitely this card is a good, like, easy card to add in. Next card is Tom Betty. It's a free cost backup EX Burst. When Tom Betty enters the field, you may search your deck for a card named Mirror or a card named Tombreeze and add it to your hand. It's an EX Burst, so it's great. You're going to get value out of it when you take damage for it. And searching for Mirror is going to be a very centerpiece for the monster deck. So I definitely foresee you running this card if you're going to be running monsters, because Mirror is a great card to complement that. And also getting Tombreeze is pretty good as well. So Tom Betty searches for 2 very relevant targets in the monster deck, and because of that, this card will see play. Talking about Tombreeze, Tombreeze is a 2-cost monster, and I believe this is the only monster that's unique. So all the other monsters all have the multiple character symbol, so you can have multiple copies of them on the field, whereas Tombreeze is the only monster that is unique at this stage. So Tombreeze, when it enters the field, choose 1 forward, it loses 2,000 power until the end of the turn, and put Tombreeze into break zone, choose 1 forward, it loses 2,000 power, and water, put Tombreeze into break zone, choose 1 forward, loses 4,000 power until the end of the turn. So Tombreeze is a pretty versatile card. If you, like, as soon as you play it, a guy loses 2,000 power, so this combos well with any sort of situation where you've already sent a forward in and you want to finish a forward off, or it just gives you the nice ability to reduce your opponent's forward and then, like, attack and force your opponent into a situation where they want to block, lose their forward, or just let you attack through. So the initial ability is not bad, and then it's also got the ongoing ability of being able to put it into the bin to, like, lose another 2,000, another 4,000. So in a way, this kind of acts very similar to what Starter Deck Vivi brought, like in Opus 3. So Starter Deck Vivi could hit for 5 or could hit for 8, depending on, like, how much you want to pump it. And Tombreeze can come in for 2, and then, like, on that same turn, you can do another -2 or do another -4, depending on your cost. So this card is actually really versatile. It comes in, has an immediate effect, and then ongoing, it's always got this, like, relevant threat to make your opponent's guys smaller. And so yeah, this card's a pretty good card, and it does synergize very well with Mirror. You can search it with Tom Betty. So yeah, this card is probably going to see play in a monster deck, depending on, like, what sort of monster suite lineup you want. Next is Viking, yet another Viking. It's a free cost Viking. When Viking enters the field, draw a card. When Viking leaves the field, draw a card. So it's got 2,000 power. Basically what this card says is, yeah, you're going to draw 2 cards off this card eventually. It costs you 3 for now, so it's actually positive CP overall, because you're getting effectively 4 CP over the course of this card's lifetime. 2,000 power is pretty negligible, so you're not going to be killing anyone unless, like, this is just the final little bit of chip damage to get over the top. But this card is basically either a brick wall, or, like, not really a brick wall, it's kind of like a mid shield that will net you positive, like, cards, and it's also just a cycle card. So this card is, yeah, definitely not a bad card, but it doesn't progress you to your win. It does cycle you through cards. So definitely, if you're playing a strategy where you need to cycle through cards, or you need to just put out whatever sort of meat shieldy type forwards or just cheap forwards, then this card fits into that strategy very well. And considering how water has a lot of ways to just sort of, like, spam forwards out, like, all you have to do is just bounce your opponent's forwards and you can attack him with a whole bunch of cheap Vikings. So that's potential strategy there. Next, we have Bronn. So Bronn is a free cost backup EX Burst. When Bronn enters the field, you may search for 1 job standard unit from your deck and add it to your hand. So this card has a lot of viability. There are a lot of great cards that this card synergizes with. And yeah, so, like, we were talking earlier about how it combos well with the Water Lightning Dragoon deck. There's plenty of water cards that are, like, great standard units. You've got Geomancers, you've got all those Vikings, and you've got Knights. So if you do want to play a more traditional Opus 3 water deck, then Bronn does give you ability to search for those 2-cost Knights, get them to your hand, and then you can play them down, or you can, like, discard them to play, like, Lena, etc. So this card's, like, a great card. It is a backup. It's a free cost backup. It's an EX Burst as well. So generally, when you have EX Burst backups that search for cards, generally the targets are very narrow, but this card has a lot of options that you can choose from, depending on how you build your deck. So this card's a great card. Any deck that runs a fair amount of job standard unit cards definitely should play this card. It's a great card. Next card is Beatrice. So it's a free cost 7k forward. If you control a card named Steiner, Beatrice gets plus 1,000 power, and Beatrice does not receive any damage from opponent's abilities. When Beatrice attacks, all forwards your opponent controls lose 1,000 power until the end of the turn. So this is a FF9 card. It works as Steiner. When you have Steiner on the field, it goes to a free cost 8k, which is great. It's able to deal 4ks, and when it attacks, all your opponent's forwards lose 1,000 power. So it's able to get over a lot of forwards. This is a very good attacker, very aggressive card, and if you have Steiner, it just, like, the value goes through the roof as well. being able to like avoid damage from your opponent's abilities is also just like a kind of like cherry on the top bonus. So it's a great card, and it's also a knight as well. So if you do want to revisit, and like I will be revisiting the knights deck, so this card is going to be another great addition to that. And so yeah, this card is a fantastic card. It's a rare, it's a great card. It's got great card art. I don't mention like card art about too many cards, but yeah, it's great. If you're playing FF9 or if you're playing Knights, this card will see play easily. Next card is Summoner. So it's a 2-cost backup. So dull, break, put Summoner into a break zone, choose one summon of cost 3 or less, cancel its effect. So this card, compared to like the Ice 3-cost Summoner, can't cancel a summon of more than like 4 or higher. So it is limited to only summons of 3 or less, which in a lot of cases is also pretty good. So basically, if your opponent is playing a summon at that 3 or less mark, generally it's either a bounce, some sort of combat trick, or like a dulling type effect. Anything higher than that is usually some sort of destruction type ability. So Summoner does like give you good range of summons that it can counter. It is a 2-cost backup, so the big issue was with the previous Summoner is that it was a 3-cost, so you couldn't play it very easily on your first turn. But 2-cost Summoner, you can put it down easily, and it's always going to be a threat while you have it up. It's more of an aggressive card in the sense that like when you are attacking, you generally have a lot of backups open, so you can attack with your guys and have this open to deal with your opponent's like responsive summons. And yeah, you always have the ability to just cancel a summon out, and it costs 2, so it's a very easy card to just put down into play. So even towards a like later game, you can just keep it open to like try and negate your opponent's summons as well. So it's a handy card. It's pretty good. Yeah, like Water did gain clear in this set as well. So if you want to run summons, but you still want to have like controlling negating abilities, the Summoner is a good card to sort of put into your deck. It costs 2. It's very easy to slot in, and it will generally be useful sometime during the game. Talking about good-looking cards, we got Mirror. It's a 2-cost forward, legendary for this set at 5,000 power, so it's on curve for where it should be. The cost required to play a monster on the field is reduced by 1. It cannot become 0. When a monster you control is put from the field into a break zone, you may dull Mirror if it is active. If you do, search for a monster with the same name and add it to your hand. So this card is a pretty strong card in the sense that, yeah, every time one of your monsters die, then this card can like search another copy from your deck, and it reduces their cost by 1 as well. So it's basically the equivalent of 2-cost Una for monsters, but it rolls in both the 2-cost backup Una and the 2-cost starter deck Una all into one card, but for monsters as well. So this card is really, really good. It can make your monsters like cost from 2 to 1 and from 3 to 2. So Tom Betty's can cost 1, and that's really good. And make your Malboros and that sort of, and your Behemoths cost 3 to 2. So that's really cost effective. In addition to this, like, yeah, whenever a monster dies, you can always like, dull her to like get another copy from your deck. So you do have to search for a monster with the same name. So most monsters are unique in that they only have 1 copy. Right now, the only monster we have that has 2 versions of itself is Goblin. So it is a Fire Goblin and an Earth Goblin. So take that into consideration. I don't think you'll be playing tricolor monsters in terms of having a fire and the Earth Goblin and water in Mirror. So I don't think that will happen too often. But yeah, so the big problem with Mirror is that there's not going to be enough copies of certain monsters. You can trigger it off like once or twice with a certain monster, but then after that it gets really difficult to do. So yeah, so that's kind of the positive and negatives of Mirror. It's not a break the game kind of card. It's going to bring a lot of good value, and this card has excellent card art. It looks fantastic. But yeah, I'm not fully convinced on like how relevant this is going to be in the monster deck. Definitely it's not a bad card, but I don't know how far it pushes the strategy forward. So yeah, I'm still up in the air about how strong this card is, but it's probably not a bad card at this stage. Next card is Melwood. So it's a 4-cost backup. When Melwood enters the field, search for 1 water forward and add it to your hand. So compared to like other search cards, this is probably one of the broadest search cards we've ever had in the game in terms of being able to search for any water forward. So that gives you a lot of like toolboxing options, and now it very much seems like Water has a lot of very good toolboxing options in terms of searching its deck out for specifically what it wants. It's got so many good options, and Melwood just adds another thing to that. So with certain water decks, they have certain plays that they want to get to, but they don't like necessarily draw those in time. So like, for example, having Lenas are really good, or having Cagnazos are really good, or just having like Fame and Magogos, etc., etc. Melwood does allow you to search them. So Melwood is a pretty fantastic card to like search all whatever combo pieces you need, or whatever like outs you need to a certain situation. So It's a really, really good valuable card. It doesn't have EX burst, but I think if it did have EX burst, it'd probably be a little bit too overpowered. It does cost 4 as well, so you do have to treat it as like a standard like 2 cost backup that like cycles you through a card. So it's not a bad card. The big issue is like what backups is Water going to play, and I think Water is now clashing with like too many good Water searchers. So at this stage, like it's a great card, and I want to play it in my Water decks, but I have to consider like what's my overall strategy for Water and which backups I want to play, and does this clash with that? And I think I'm not too sure of where I want it to be at that stage. Next card is Moogle Theater Rhythm. So it's a 2 cost backup for Water, Dull, Break, draw 1 card. So it's basically a 2 cost backup that you can just break at some point and to draw yourself a card. Not much more to be said about it. So basically, yeah, you put it into play early. When you need backup space later, you just break it, draw a card, and you can put something else down. So it is a Moogle. So if you do want to sort of build a Moogle-based deck, then yeah, this is a relevant way to get additional Moogle onto field. That being said, though, like all those like Moogle backups that had really more potent effects when you have more Moogles in play, I'm not sure many of them are still like relevant or viable. So like No to reactivate multiple guys. After the second guy, you're pretty much good, all right? So this is really only good with the Fire Moogle, which is, I believe, I forget what the Fire Moogle is called, and then like the Lightning Moogle is called Hurdy. So yeah, so like the Lightning Moogle gives minus X 1,000 depending on how many Moogles, and the Fire one deals X 1,000 depending on how many Moogles you got. So this card does sort of like build into those Moogle strategies, but otherwise, I don't think like Water really needs like another Moogle on the field, especially like a Moogle like this. Yes, it does combo with the Water Moogle of like cycle you through cards from your deck. So I guess it's not too bad in that regard. But like I kind of would want my 2 cost Water backups to like actually do something other than just kind of cycle through themselves. Having a Summoner is good. Having a Scholar is pretty good. Even having a Gladiator is pretty solid as well. So I think simply because having other 2 cost backups that are more relevant to your game is going to like take precedence. This card will only really see play in like a very Moogle-based strategy. Next is Mog 6. If you control 2 or more Category 6 forwards other than Mog 6, Mog 6 cannot be chosen by your opponent's summons or abilities. It's got Dull, draw 1 card. It's a 3 cost forward at 4,000 power. So it's below curve, and it's basically a card that's just going to engine and cycle and draw you more cards. And yeah, if you do have 2 or more Category 7 forwards other than Mog, so if you have 3 Category 6 forwards, then yeah, this card isn't choosable by opponent's summons or abilities, and generally there's not too many cards that are able to AoE for 4k damage, so it's generally pretty safe as long as you have like 2 other guys to protect him, and it's just going to draw you through more cards. Definitely, like I can foresee like some sort of like Final Fantasy 6 strategy being built around Water plus something else, and so yeah, this card is a little bit cute depending on how greedy the rest of your Final Fantasy 6 lineup is. This may see play, but like if it does like draw 1 or 2 cards, this card's getting like massive value already. And yeah, so potentially this will see play in like a Water something FF6 deck that isn't too greedy. Next card is Mime. So it's a 2 cost forward at 4,000 power. It's standard unit. Pay 1, Mime's power becomes the same as your opponent's weakest forward until the end of the turn. So there's actually like a very technical like side to this card's ability. So Mime's power, so basically it makes Mime's printed power the same as your opponent's weakest forward's current power. So to sort of translate this is, so whatever your opponent's weakest forward, their current power is, makes Mime's base power that power. So any sort of buffs on Mime, such as Waka, get added on to the power that Mime takes. So if your opponent has a 7,000 power forward, Mime gains that 7,000 power from it becomes 7,000 power, and then all the buffs are applied to that 7,000 power. So Mime is able to get over certain forwards if he has buffs on it. So because of this, Mime is actually surprisingly a lot better than it seems. If your opponent has only 1 forward on the field or has multiple forwards with the same power, then Mime is able to basically run over the top of him as long as it's got a little bit of a buff. So as long as you got Walker out, which most Water decks will have, Mime will be able to like outfight any forward as long as that's the only one forward or the only forward of that power. Or the only forward of that same power on your opponent's side. So yeah, Mime is really strong, and something to note that Mime can use this ability multiple times during the turn. So if you use this ability gain your opponent's power, and your opponent then uses some sort of combat trick to buff their forward up even higher, you can use Mime to steal their new current power. So this is actually something that I completely forgot at some stage during Sealed, that you can use Mime's effect multiple times. So Mime in effect is going to be like a really good way to deal with certain like really buffing type strategies such as Earth. So if Earth has like tons of ways to buff itself, Mime has the same way to just constantly match them. And as long as Mime's got like a passive buff on it, such as like through Walker or something else like that, then Mime is going to be able to win fights. So Mime is like surprisingly good. Next is Malboro. It's a 3-cost monster, and for 1 water, until the end of the turn, Malboro becomes a 4 with 6,000 power. When Malboro blocks or is blocked, all forwards your opponent controls lose 2,000 power until the end of the turn. You can only use this ability once per turn. So, when it says you can only use this ability once per turn, it means you can only transform it into a forward once per turn. The ability to reduce power by 2,000, you can do that multiple times during the turn. So Malboro is actually a really, really good blocker. So in the sense that, like Legendary Prish from Opus 1, every time she blocks, she gains plus 4,000 power. So the first time she blocks goes to 12, after that goes to 16, etc. Malboro's effect kind of works in the same way, in that first time it blocks, your opponent loses, like, all their guys lose 2,000 power, and if they attack again, all of them lose another 2,000 power. So Malboro basically forces your opponent to just, like, stop attacking after one attack, because, like, Malboro will block the first one, and, like, if you're, like, reducing 4,000 power off your opponent's forwards, yeah, your opponent's not going to attack with that second one. So Malboro is a really good blocker. As an attacker, not bad either. It means it can go up against, like, 8,000 power forwards and, like, trade against them. If you've got, like, any sort of way to buff it up, such as Waka, because it is a water card, so it is able to trade up even higher. It's a really strong offensive and defensive card, and it is immune to certain, like, monster destruction abilities, such as Remove, because it is a 3-cost monster as well. You combo this with Mirror, and this is, like, a really strong combination effect. So this card is going to be a huge part of the water monster, like, suite, because this card's effect is so potent, and I'm really excited to be, like, trying this out and, like, playing it in a more, like, defensive or even offensive type, like, strategy. Next card we have is Leviathan. It's a 3-cost summon, EX Burst. Choose 1 forward you control and 1 forward an opponent controls, return them to their owner's hand. So this card, so to clarify for this card, you have to have both a legal target on your side of the field and your opponent's side of the field to even use this ability. If you do not have a forward, you cannot use Leviathan's ability at all, even though you want to. And that's kind of the biggest drawback for this card, is that you both need to have a forward. So your opponent needs to have a forward and you need to have a forward in order to use this card's ability. And that's kind of the biggest drawback. It's a lot less flexible than the other 3-cost Leviathan, where you can choose to bounce any forward, yours or your opponent's. This kind of locks you into a situation where you both have to bounce a guy. And because of that, the applications of this card is, like, a lot more narrower. Now, there are some combo potentials where, oh yeah, you want to play a forward that has a really strong enter-play ability. So that's pretty good. But I think in those sort of situations, this card is a little bit, like, its effect is a little bit too niche. And in a lot of cases, what you want from Leviathan is you want a situation where you can just clear out your opponent's guys and just go in through, or if you want to flip it off an EX Burst, you just want to bounce your opponent's guy, no question marks, no drawbacks. This card has an inherent drawback to it, and its cost doesn't really justify it as well. So if it was like a 2-cost EX Burst that also did the same effect, then potentially you might see it being more relevant, especially having rare unit that can cost it from 2 down to 1. That's actually pretty good. But at 3 cost, I think that's the problem. It's just a little bit too overcosted for a card that's got a drawback as well. So, next card is Realm. Now, this is a card that's going to really make the monster deck. It's a 2-cost 5,000 power forward, EX Burst. When Realm enters the field, reveal the top 5 cards of your deck. Add 1 monster among them from your hand and return the other cards to the bottom of your deck in any order. It's got Dull, choose 1 monster until the end of the turn. It also becomes a forward with 7,000 power. So this card is absolutely amazing. So just when you play this card, you're immediately getting value back, assuming that you hit a monster. But considering you're playing the monster deck, you should have quite a reasonable number, so you're going to be hitting it most of the time. It's also an EX Burst, so yeah, so even if you receive it as damage, you're going to get value off it. So that's already, like, value there. But also it's got the ability of just, like, Dull, make a monster 7,000 power. So this gives monsters that don't have the ability to turn into, like, forwards, a way to turn into forwards. And yeah, so, like, after you play this on the field, not only can she, like, randomly attack if there are openings from your opponent, but also she can also just make your forwards gain power as well. So that's really strong, especially if you've got, like, just random forwards, just like an Adamantoise. You can use Realm's ability to dull itself, make Adamantoise a 7,000 power blocker. You just block, even though you like, even though you might not win combat, you can just in response to combat, then blow up your Adamantoise to use its ability for whatever. So Realm just like gives so much value to monster-based decks. It makes any monster that can't turn itself into forward able to turn itself into forward. Any monster that's small that needs a buff as well can also get value from this. So if you're playing Malboro and you use its ability to make it a 6-cost monster, you can then use Realm's ability to like make it from a 6-cost from a 6,000 power monster to a 7,000 power monster. So yeah, there's value in that as well. So Realm is such a great card. If you're playing a monster-based deck, I don't see any reason not to run free of this card. And that's it. Thanks for watching, guys. This is, yeah, the water video for Opus 4 all done. I've got one more video up where I talk about the light and dark cards. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. If you guys have any questions or feedback, definitely do post them down in the bottom. If you enjoy my content, please feel free to thumbs up and like this video, subscribe. I really appreciate it. It just helps out with the YouTube algorithm, helps me get a little bit more views, and allows me to share the content out with the community. So I really appreciate it, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed, and Grand J out.